Gregory Peck was supposed to be one of the good ones, Hollywood's unshakable moral compass. The man who played Atticus Finch and made an entire generation believe that integrity wasn't just a character trait, it was a way of life. For decades, he carried that image without a single visible crack. But here's the thing about men who seem perfect from the outside. The most interesting parts of their story are almost always the ones they spent years keeping quiet. Because behind the Oscar and the standing ovations and the carefully maintained dignity was a man shaped by wounds he never fully talked about. A man who spent most of his adult life searching for something he couldn't quite name. And when he finally found it, really found it, the story turned out to be nothing like anyone expected. To understand how Gregory Peck became the man he was, you have to go all the way back to the beginning. Not the glamorous beginning. The painful one. He was 5 years old when his parents divorced, and that single event set the tone for nearly everything that followed. He didn't stay with either parent. Instead, he was sent to live with his grandmother. A kind arrangement, perhaps, but one that carried an unmistakable message for a small child. You are not the priority. That quiet sense of being shuffled aside didn't disappear when he grew up and became famous. It just went underground, shaping the reserved, guarded quality that audiences would later interpret as sophisticated stoicism. What they were actually seeing was a man who had learned very early to keep his inner world locked away. He spent his youth in search of an anchor, something solid, something that wouldn't disappear. And when he began building a career in Hollywood in the early 1940s, that search became more urgent than ever. Fame was arriving fast and bringing chaos with it, and Peck, the abandoned boy who grew into a careful, controlled man, desperately needed something to hold on to. He found it, or thought he found it, in Greta Conan. They married on October 4, 1942, and from the outside, it looked exactly right. Greta wasn't a product of the Hollywood fantasy machine. She was grounded, composed, and deeply practical. Everything that the film industry was not. Their marriage wasn't a fairy tale romance. It was a deliberate construction, a fortress built against the uncertainty they could both feel coming. And for a while, it held. 3 children arrived in quick succession: Jonathan in 1944, Stephen in 1946, and Carolyn in 1948. And Greta created a home that was, by all accounts, genuinely stable, private, insulated from the gossip and spectacle that surrounded her husband's rising name. But then Hollywood happened in the way that Hollywood always does. It doesn't destroy things dramatically. It erodes them. The filming schedules stretched into months. The international travel became relentless. The public version of Gregory Peck grew louder and larger and more demanding, with every passing year, until the private man, the husband, the father, had less and less room to exist. Biographers who have studied this period suggest that Peck never deliberately withdrew from his family. There was no single betrayal, no explosive confrontation. What happened was far more insidious than that. It was silence, stretching a little longer between conversations. Phone calls ending a little faster than they used to. A shared life slowly falling out of sync, not with a crash, but with a long, quiet drift. Greta held on to the version of their life they had built together. Peck kept stepping further into a spotlight that consumed more of him each year. 2 people technically still in the same story, but no longer reading the same page. By the early 1950s, the distance between them had become something neither could honestly ignore. The marriage officially ended on December 30th, 1955, closing a chapter that had once seemed like the answer to everything. But even as his marriage to Greta was fracturing, another chapter had already quietly begun. And this one would stay with Gregory Peck for the rest of his life. It was 1945 when he first appeared on screen, alongside Ingrid Bergman, in Alfred Hitchcock's psychological thriller Spellbound. Bergman was 30 years old, and already considered one of the most extraordinary actresses of her generation. Peck was 29, rising fast, but still hungry, still finding his footing. On paper, their situation was completely impossible. She was married to Swedish physician Peter Lindström. He was married to Greta, with young children at home. None of that prevented what some biographers and accounts from the era have described as a powerful and complicated attraction between them. According to those who have written about this period, the chemistry between Peck and Bergman was evident almost immediately.